Every day, Tariq commutes to work on this underground train. But since the 7th of July 2005, he feels that his every movement is putting him under the spotlight.
So I personally have had, people walk past and flicking their cigarettes at me, obviously out of malicious intent. Other people have, spat on me. When I get on the train and I sit down next to someone, they make their face, they stand up and they walk away.
3 tragic events have come to haunt the people of Britain. All of them are linked to the Muslim community here. On the 22nd of May 2013, a white soldier was killed by a group of black Muslims. Since then, the prejudices and bigotry against the Muslim community have taken a turn for the worse.
But seeing that the attitude of the non-Muslims has got more bitter.
You wanted to talk about Islam?
No, I didn't. You wanted to talk about Islam. I wanted to talk about your belief.
And the extreme side of that is starting to take shape in the form of some groups like EDL.
The issue of Islamicisation is pure and simple, a story told to incite people to feel fear against Muslims.
That people are enemies with regards to what they are ignorant of.
What is at the root cause of all this hatred towards the Muslims? Or could the Muslim community itself be at fault?
Islam is a wonderful thing. The Muslims are not quite so wonderful.
I mean, my personal side, somebody starts saying anything about Prophet ﷺ, I'll smack him. Am I a terrorist? No.
You cannot blame some civilian shopping somewhere for the actions of a politician in some other part of the world. This is against the principle of Quranic justice.
We look at the life of the Muslim community in Britain to understand the reality of Islamophobia. The Southwark Cathedral, on the southern banks of the Thames, is more than 170 years old. It stands proud as the symbol of Christianity, the main religion of Britain. Bishop Michael Ipgrave is the spiritual leader of this historic church and is responsible for the affairs of his Christian congregation in South London. But since May 2013, he's had to work harder to strengthen the bonds between Christians and Muslims, especially those in Woolwich. Woolwich is a small town in southeast London. A large portion of its residents are black and Muslims.
Well, Woolwich is a very diverse community with a long-standing Muslim community and strong Christian communities and also people of other faiths. And there's been a long history of friendship and of partnership of people working together in Woolwich. I was very interested to find that when the Muslim community first arrived in Woolwich, I think in the 1960s, they had no place to pray and they were invited to use the local Roman Catholic church hall to pray in. I thought this was a wonderful.
On the 22nd of May 2013, Britain was shaken by a tragedy that tainted the image of Islam. A white soldier, a Christian, was murdered in cold blood by two blacks, both Muslims. Michael Ipgrave was just a year into his term as bishop for Woolwich and Southwark when the bloody event took place.
And whatever slogans the young men who were filmed in that incident, whatever slogans they were using, it was a murder and cannot be justified in terms of religion. And I heard that message very clearly from my Muslim friends and neighbours and colleagues also. So in that sense, yeah, it wasn't a religious incident. And in some parts of England, indeed in some parts of London, there was a noted rise in anti-Muslim Islamophobic incidents.
So I personally have had, you know, people walk past and flicking their cigarettes at me, obviously out of malicious intent. Other people have, you know, spat on me. When I get on the train and I sit down next to someone, they make their face, they stand up and they walk away. So there's these types of things. I mean, you know, London, it's a bit sad because London is actually one of the most multicultural cities in the world. But you know, we're scared for our friends, we're scared for our family. And it doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter where you're living, what the social standard is, that shouldn't be happening anywhere.
The term Islamophobia was first used in Runnymede Trust, a left-wing think tank in 1997. It means the fear, prejudice against, and hatred against Islam and Muslims. It connotes that Islam is incompatible with other cultures and represents a violent political ideology. Tariq Sheikh is 29. This young man of Pakistani and Irish parents began life as a Muslim in 2008. Since then, the attitudes of the community towards him have changed.
You know, to a lot of people, I'm a English-looking, British-looking white person, you know. So when they see me, especially if I'm with a bunch of, you know, Muslim-looking people, or when they see me with my beard and dressed a certain way, the reaction of a lot of people, and this happens when I'm walking down the street, a lot of my friends would say to them, wow, that person was really looking at you funny, they were not impressed with you. And this is sometimes like I don't know if it's a complex that certain people have, but there's a whole sense of, you know, you were one of us. Why did you leave us? Why have you gone to them? You know. So there's a sense of type of traitor mentality, you know, because you're white, you're one of us. You know, and obviously, you know, what's so good about these guys? Why have you left us?
Fayaz Magal is among the most vocal in expressing the unhappiness of the Muslim community in Britain. He heads Faith Matters, which regularly organizes meetings with non-Muslim leaders to foster closer interreligious bonds. Through a campaign called Tell Mama, his group has become a watchdog for anti-Islam and anti-Muslim incidents in Britain.
The fear of any community is not justified because it comes from ignorance. The incidences of people involved in terrorism compared to the Muslim population is minuscule. So, you know, but the perception given by far right and other groups is that Muslims are all like this to suit political agendas. And that in itself is damaging, because those political agendas can create sections of intolerance and can create actual laws building on intolerance, and that's where the real problem then starts.
Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, Maliki Yawmiddin, Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in.
For Tariq, what's more worrying is that those who know him have also changed their attitudes towards him when he began practicing as a Muslim.
Shopping, and I saw one of these old ladies, and she came up to me, and she was always very sweet to me before, very, you know, she showed a lot of love towards me. And on this occasion, she came up and she said, "Oh my God, Tariq, what happened? You know, what's wrong? What happened?" I said, "I don't have a clue what she said." I was like, "Oh, nothing, I'm fine. How are you? Everything all right?" And she said, when did this come happen? And I explained, I said, Nini, I'm a Muslim now, you know, I decided to grow the beard, it's part of my faith. And she was just, you know, really almost disappointed, shocked that I had become a Muslim, that I was like this. And she said, "But you were so nice before." She adored me, but not knowing anything about me afterwards, apart from the fact that I had a beard, that was enough for her to cast her judgment that, "Whoa, you don't have to be like this."
The great scholar of Islam, Imam Al-Ghazali, said about this. He said, "An-nasu a'da'u ma jahilu," that people are enemies with regards to what they are ignorant of. So when we have events like 9/11 or 7/7 in England, or this recent Woolwich event, people who do not know much about Islam would have heard about Islam simply because, oh, there are these Muslims who murder people. So then they think that, you know, Muslims are in the business, unfortunately, of killing people, and that's of course not true.
The Muslims suffered greatly in the aftermath of 7/7, more than 9/11.
The Edgware station was one of the targets in the 7th July bombing. It's been years, but the brunt of the anger and hatred has been borne by the Muslims ever since. What is the root cause of all this anger and hatred among the British towards Islam? We met up with George Galloway, the British opposition member of Parliament who is known for his outspoken support for oppressed Palestinians and Muslims. Mr. Galloway believes the 7th July event was a problem just waiting to happen.
The Muslims suffered greatly in the aftermath of 7/7, more than 9/11, because this was a very British thing. And I had been warning for years before that we were sowing this swamp of hatred.
Who are you on the other side to decide what the international community thinks should do? If you're unable to persuade...
I had been a member of Parliament for many years before that, but this propelled me into a very prominent position as someone who was saying, number one, that millions of Muslims hate us because of what we're doing in Muslim countries. Number two, if we handle what's happened in New York and Washington in the wrong way, then we'll create tens of thousands of new bin Ladens, which is of course precisely what we did.
Since the 7th July incident, the life of the British Muslim community has changed significantly. Even though the anger has subsided, the prejudices, bigotry, and discrimination continue to exist.
The discrimination is not prevalent like mosquito bites, but it's there. To them, they don't understand. If somebody said bad thing about Prophet ﷺ, how can this Muslim rise up in tides and tides and tides? To us Muslim, there's a red line. If you go over that, we will not tolerate it. I mean, on my personal side, somebody starts saying anything about Prophet ﷺ, I'll smack him. Am I a terrorist? No.
The negative perception towards Islam is nothing new. It has existed since Islam first came to Britain more than 100 years ago.
I think although we complain of Islamophobia today, things were much worse for the early Victorian converts. The first mosque in Liverpool was constantly confronting people throwing bricks through the windows, people rubbing broken glass into the carpets, people smearing horse dung on the faces of Muslim women who were wearing their hijab. Things were very difficult then. That was the age when the British thought that they were the climax of evolution, where Britannia ruled the waves, where Islam was seen as the religion of funny foreign people, and to go over to it was seen as a form of profound cultural treason. So although our situation today is uncomfortable, I don't think that it's as bad as it was 100 years ago, and even more recently.
This is Brookwood Cemetery, 30 kilometers from central London. Here rest some of Britain's earliest Muslim personalities. Islam came to Britain in the 18th century. William Henry Quilliam and Baron Hedley Dan Marmaduke Pickthall were some of the pioneers who spread the word and teachings of Islam in Britain. The Shah Jahan Mosque in Woking, Surrey was built in 1889. It was the first built as a center for the study of various religions. But today, this mosque stands as a symbol of Britain's acceptance towards Islam.
Thank you as far as the mosque to invite us. Really, very kind.
Asad Jamil is the secretary of the Shah Jahan Mosque in Woking, Surrey. He's among the young leaders who regularly interact with the Christians to enhance community relations.
Being a Muslim in Britain is a very interesting time because our religion is constantly under scrutiny. We have to be constantly aware because we are advocates of our religion. People see us as first as a Muslim. So whatever you do, they won't see you as a human being making a mistake. They'll see you as a Muslim making a mistake.
They said that these imams were saying that it is haram to vote. And I was very outraged by this.
Is a small town about 20 kilometers from central London. A large portion of its residents are black Muslims. Councillor Abdul Muhammad is one of the first black Muslims to be elected mayor. Having grown up and worked with many communities, he appreciates the diversity that exists in Peckham.
And the Peckham Mosque, They were opening up a floor that they had just finished. And the council leader said about diversity, and he said, we are very, very proud in London and in England to have a number of people from all over the world, but we also need diverse people of diverse faiths. When the mosque invited me to come to Friday prayers, and they asked me to make a sermon inside the mosque before the prayers on the Friday, I said to the congregation that it wasn't diverse from the outside in the community. The diversity was also on the inside. You find Muslims from everywhere. So the people who are sitting within the mosque are as diverse, even more diverse than people on the outside.
The 2011 census showed nearly 15%, or 270,000 residents of England and Wales, are black Muslims. There's a concern that the young generation of black Muslims may be more easily influenced by the teachings of violent and radical groups.
I can tell you that there is quite a few problems in the Islamic community. The black vote is just absent from the democracy, which is not a desirable thing. So they said that these imams were saying that it is haram to vote. And I was very outraged by this. Me and many others were very outraged by this, because we thought that the best way for you to take part in a community that you're living in is actually to take part in the democratic process.
It's the new generation, ironically the people who've been subjected in quite a deep way to British culture, who are the ones who seem most vulnerable to processes of radicalisation. So the fact that their roots have to do with Pakistan, Bangladesh or wherever, I think is not relevant. Instead, we're talking about part of a globalised phenomenon.
Britain is one of the most open Western countries to the immigration of Muslims. Not surprisingly, the number of British citizens embracing Islam has also increased. Since 2001, more than 5,000 British citizens embrace Islam every year. Almost 5%, or 3 million British citizens, are Muslims. This makes Islam the second biggest religion in Britain today. Paris, Milan, Munich are her international stages. At 19, Deborah David is one of the leading international fashion models in the world. Today, she only wants to be known by her Islamic name, Karima Dawood. Karima is one of many British citizens who embraced Islam since 2001. Even though she resides in London, she feels more at home wearing the hijab that covers her awrat.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والليل إذا يغشى والنهار إذا تجلى وما خلق الذكر.
I had a really big jahiliyyah, really big. I went to Cannes Film Festival with Spike Lee. I've been out for dinner with the singer Prince. I've really been in jahiliyyah, like proper Hollywood, you know, top life. And I suppose I had really had it, like if you have a meal and you have too much to eat, I really had got to that point in my life where I wanted something different and something that was more connected with God.
Since embracing Islam, Karima feels at ease even though she realizes that many are uneasy with her sudden transformation. She feels Muslims should set a good example if they want to be accepted by the wider community.
You have Muslims who don't know how to behave properly. Some of them, they don't even want to be Muslims. They're only Muslims because they were born a Muslim, and in their culture they have to be Muslim, or they have to wear hijab, or have to dress a certain way, otherwise the rest of their community would shun them. And normally these are some of the people that cause problems, because when you actually look at those Muslims, they have a bad attitude. They don't say Salaam alaikum when they go into a building, and then they will say, oh, but they don't like us because we're black. No, it's not because you're black, it's because you don't have any manners.
British anti-Muslim sentiments are further fueled by an extremist group calling itself the English Defence League, or EDL. EDL claims that Britain is inundated by Muslim groups which will change the face of the English nation and way of life. They are instigating the public to hate and ostracize the Muslim community.
Over half of the 2.8 million Muslims are born in this country. They're not from other countries, they're born in this country. This issue of Islamicization is pure and simple, a story told to incite people to feel fear against Muslims. And let's look at the reality, 2.6 versus 60 million. There is no takeover of the United Kingdom. There never will be a takeover of the United Kingdom.
I think a lot of the right-wing racist talk about fear of an Islamic majority and the transformation of England into a Sharia ruled country is preposterous, nonsense. But no doubt, listen, never mind the general population, sometimes I take a look at the Muslims, not just here but around the world, and recoil. Islam is a wonderful thing. The Muslims are not quite so wonderful.
Perhaps one of the root causes of Islamophobia is the attitude of the Muslim community itself. For example, this group calls itself Muslim Patrol. They are forcing members of other religions to accept Islam.
No more prostitutes! You make up part of the problem.
Yeah.
You make up part of the problem. This is a Muslim area and you're not wanted around here. You can't say, I respect your friends.
You wanted to talk about Islam?
No, I didn't. You wanted to talk about Islam. I wanted to talk about your belief. I asked you a simple question.
Welcome to a democracy, it's too late. If you want
very rude.
You're in the wrong. This is of value to you. 5, 6, 7.
Hyde Park on a weekend, a place to express your opinions, whatever they may be. But many of the speakers here at Speaker's Corner choose to denigrate Islam.
Evolution has
But also here, Farouk McDermott preaches or da'wah to anyone who wishes to know more about Islam.
That person has the Spirit of God. But if someone
Farouk himself embraced Islam 9 years ago and has been very outspoken against those who wish to test him.
So where did it all come from then?
Do you really want to know?
I'm asking you, simply.
Let's talk about evolution for a minute.
No, I'm not asking you that.
You're not? Why? Bak, bak, bak.
I asked you where it all came from.
Why? Bak, bak, bak. Will you not talk about your religion?
What's my religion?
Evolution.
No, I'm a Muslim.
Evolution?
I'm a Muslim.
You wanted to talk about Islam? Let's talk
No,
about
I
Islam.
didn't. You wanted to talk about Islam. I wanted to talk about your belief.
Well,
I asked you a simple question.
Welcome to a democracy.
This Bible, I've had it since I became Muslim. And I've made a lot of notes and I read it in order to know more about what my subject believes. And if I don't know the belief of the people, then how can I call them away from it? Jesus cannot tell a lie because he is a prophet of Allah. And I believe that to be a fact.
He's the Son of God, he's God in the flesh.
This,
But
I'm
that's
talking
the
from my
Jesus-
belief, my
Right,
understanding, yeah? But he didn't tell a lie in the red. That's what I believe, yeah? And you believe the same, right?
And in mine.
You know, one day, I will die. You will die. And we will both face Allah. And you
No,
think
we'll
that
both
you'll be
face
on the side.
Jesus.
We'll see you on the Yawm al-Qiyamah. Allah Ta'ala, you are shahid.
The original language of... But from a non-Muslim aspect, when they see that I'm called a traitor, I say, a traitor to what? Huh? Tell me what I'm a traitor of. And they'll say, you're a traitor of Queen and country. And I'll say, and what country is that? Great Britain? You need to read the history of this country, my friend, to see if it's really great or not, yeah? Really, this is what I say to them, yeah? Because they see me as somebody who's gone on to the enemy's side. The attitude of the non-Muslims has got more bitter. And the extreme side of that is starting to take shape, yeah, in the form of some groups like EDL, and not just the EDL, but you've got the Scottish version of it, the Welsh version of it, and they're small extremist groups who want to see the end of Islam, because, like you said, they see it as a threat to the British heritage.
Miriam Francois Chera grew up in a Christian family of mixed French and Irish parentage in Britain. As a child actress, she used to act in a number of films. Miriam embraced Islam in 2003 while doing research on Islam at Cambridge University. She was 21 at the time. Today, Miriam joins other activists and academics who are trying hard to change the mindset and negative image of Islam in the West.
So in the wake of those incidents, particularly 7/7, I would say, the Muslim community has been largely viewed through a security lens. So that means the constant perception of Muslims as a threat, be it as a cultural threat or a political threat or an actual physical threat, as it were, to broader British society. And numerous reports testify to this, that the media plays a part, in fact, in emphasising this idea of an inherent incompatibility between Muslims and Islam and British culture more broadly. And of course, we've seen, unfortunately, in the light of the most recent Woolwich attack, I think an empowerment of elements of the far right who see such incidents as a vindication of their extremist rhetoric.
Murdered many in India. It's the law in this country.
What Tariq and Farouk are doing is not just to attract people to Islam. It is also to repair Islam's tainted image. Indeed, there are also other non-Muslims in Britain who understand the need to clean up the negative perceptions of Islam. Michael Clear is the manager of a social Chessian project under the Southwark Council. His efforts to raise the level of inter-community relations are best seen in his project called Piece by Piece.
In essence, what this project was about was profiling 15 Muslims living in Southwark from very different backgrounds, and it was about giving them a platform to speak for themselves, to try and counteract some of the misunderstandings that still hold over to this day. So this to me was a demonstration of the impact in at least the life of this one person. You hope that it's replicated many times, that many people come who don't have this broad understanding of what it means to be Muslim and come away thinking, you know what, we're actually all the same.
However, the efforts by non-Muslims like Michael to help develop a better understanding of Islam for the general public are viewed with suspicion by some of the Muslim community itself.
Some mosques were a little suspicious, I think, of what this was all about, where we were coming from, what were we trying to achieve, were we in some way trying to socially engineer that we are forcing people to like each other, that you're bringing them together and saying, like each other. Now, of course, that has to be counterproductive. It has to happen in its own way, in its own time, as a natural thing. But I would say to Muslim communities, as I would say to any section of the population, we have nothing to fear from each other.
It's very funny, I have to think who is Muslim, who is not Muslim. West Indians are all intermarried now. I'm sorry, I'm just being interviewed, but I will hold it for you. Okay. This is our community. Never mind filming. Community comes first.
Portobello is in the district of Notting Hill and is known for its cosmopolitan community.
It's very funny. I have to think who is Muslim, who's not Muslim. And when I was a child, my mother was a teacher, and it was then just black children in the class. And she said, if somebody asked her that question, she would have to think.
Here, Robina Rose celebrates the differences in each race, religion, and culture. Her good friend is a Muslim lady from Malaysia who owns a Malay restaurant here.
My mother died. I used to cook for my mother, and I found Hirani's place, and then why should I cook for just me? I started coming here, and then I just got to know Hirani, and I deeply respect her, and we're sort of friends. We're really friends, you know.
Kak ni masih ingat satu hari, customer Kak ni bercerita pasal keburukan orang Islam gitu begini. Mungkin ada orang tak tahu Kak ni Islam, kerana Kak ni tak pakai tudung. Kak ni besoknya Kak ni datang, Kak ni pakai tudung, Kak ni dia orang terperanjat. Orang agama kita yang mengaku agama kita yang buat benda-benda yang tak baik ni, kita semua terlibat. Jadi bagi saya nak tunjuk bukan.
Well, I can see in Hirani, you know, that she's very honest. She has complete integrity. You can see it is. You can just, I can't say why I think those are Muslim things, but I can see that they go along with being a proper person.
Still, Robina's understanding of Muslims doesn't seem to be shared by others. In a study done in 2010, 63% of British society do not object to the statement that Muslims are terrorists. 75% believe Islam has a negative influence on the country. Is this an omen for the future of Muslims in Britain?
No doubt since 9/11, since 7/7, since Woolwich, there has been a rise in Islamophobic feeling, but it still doesn't affect or motivate the vast majority of people in Britain. This is a pretty decent and tolerant country on the whole, at least by comparison with others. As people always say, if you think England's racist, you've never been to France.
It's a harder job for the mass media in modern Britain because they don't know who to go to. Who is the Muslim equivalent of a bishop, for instance, or the local clergyman? They simply don't know. And even in cases where there are community leaders, often their command of English is not sufficiently good to enable them to explain what the majority of Muslims think, which is that these phenomena have nothing to do with Islamic orthodoxy but come only from the fringes.
Mosques in Britain often become the targets and are accused of spreading violent teachings in Islam. The Finsbury Mosque faced a crisis in the late 1990s when its imam held extremist views.
I don't think that's particularly a problem. We should say this is a problem for the Muslim community, you need to sort it out. It's not like that. But there is an issue around extreme radicalisation that taps into some young people's intense anger that they carry within them. I mean, it seemed to me, looking at those young men, they're very angry people. But there is certainly, I think, a problem about the use of religious language and religious ideology to justify crime. And that's an issue which we need to address as a society, and perhaps particularly through our education system.
The
greatest thing we have to fear is fear itself. We aren't all that different, you know. When we begin to open up to each other and listen to each other's stories, life experiences, then we find that common ground.
I hope to see a move away from Islam as an identity, as a rejectionist identity, and a move towards a perception of faith as a strict moral code.
We need to give a better perception of Islam and the Muslims by looking at our history, by reminding the communities here that when Europe was in its dark ages, Islam and the Muslims had gone through its period of enlightenment, that they were the repository of knowledge when Europe didn't have street lights. So Muslims had done a lot to world civilization.
I think this question of xenophobia and the fear of foreigners is something that's exploited sometimes, quite frequently. We've seen this, haven't we? And so Islam is just yet another group of people who are being banded about like that. And I feel that it's the xenophobia that goes to them should not go against identity, because people should be strong enough to say they have got their faith. And any democracy should be proud enough to protect people's faiths.
The main problem in Britain is godlessness. The main problem in Britain is the death of religion. The Muslims must be defended insofar as they try to do that. And the Muslims should not hide themselves away. On the contrary, they should be openly proselytizing for the deen, but in an attractive way.
Western societies, such as Britain, often feel threatened by rapid developments in the Islamic world. More so when members of their own community decide to embrace Islam. The prejudices and bigotry towards Islam may be difficult to eradicate as long as the Islamic world itself is in chaos. For Farouk, Karama, and Tariq, their key mission is to clean up the tainted image of Islam and to share the beauty of their faith to those influenced by Islamophobia.
When you see on the media and the TV that Muslims are portrayed the complete opposite to fitrah, yeah, you think these people are crazy, evil individuals. Regardless of what the Muslims are doing, the source of Islam is the truth. Yeah, I may be a Muslim and I might make mistakes and I might say the wrong thing, but the Book of Allah, it cannot be wrong.
More born Muslims, they should see this. Being a Muslim is an advantage, not just because Islam is growing, but because of all the tools that Allah's given us in the Quran to live our life.
I just said this because, you know, I guess I want to be recognized as a Muslim. You know, when I do something good, then I want people to know that it's Islam that motivates me to do that. You know, so I mean, I think people need to just, you can be a Muslim, you can be British.